Friends, Namaskar. I am Sanjay Mansukhani from Kolkata, and I am a teacher of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Dear friends, today we look at one of the most important three sutras which precede the actual siddhis or the mystic powers which are covered by Patanjali in the third chapter of the Yoga Sutras. We all know that siddhis are mystic powers, siddhis are supernatural powers, and even today the scientific community of this world has still not been able to figure out how was Patanjali able to write in so much detail about the siddhis and the underlying sciences. Dear friends, the entire siddhis can be understood if one understands a few basic facts of metaphysics as expressed in Sankhya Darshan by Kapil Muni, and also if one reads some of the important sutras referred to by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras. So specifically there are three sutras I am talking about today, and these sutras are sutra number 13, 14 and 15 of the third chapter on Vibhutis, which is the chapter which covers the siddhis from his Yoga Sutras. So let us look at them and let us try to grasp what Patanjali is trying to tell us. And dear friends, once when we understand these three sutras and their meaning, we will start to understand as to what exactly happens in the siddhis and how they can be understood. What is the underlying science, underlying mechanics, underlying metaphysics of these siddhis. So in sutra number 13, Patanjali says that the way, the characteristics which define the objects and the senses is explained through their three essential features. The first one can be called the properties, the second one the time, and the third one the condition. So what it effectively means is there are three essential parameters which define any object or the state of our senses. The first one is the characteristics of that object. The second one is the state in terms of time of that object. And the third one is the condition in which that object is found. That is the third parameter. Now here this also applies to the changing states of the mind, the changing states of the senses and the sense objects. This is how Vyasa puts it, because these three parameters are applicable to all forms of Prakriti, all evolutes of Prakriti. When I say Prakriti, I mean the mood Prakriti, the primordial Prakriti, which is unmanifest, but which evolves out and which brings out into manifestation various evolutes like the Mahat, the intellect, the ego, the mind, the senses and the sense objects. So all of them have three main parameters by which one can understand them well, and it also explains their changes which happen in them. So by understanding what are these parameters and what kind of changes can happen in them, once this explanation as given by Patanjali is comprehended and understood, then we understand how the siddhis operate, how a yogi acquires his siddhis and moves deeper and starts working on these three parameters of everything, the mind, the senses and the sense objects. Patanjali here categorically mentions these three parameters which define constant change of all manifest reality as dharma, lakshana and avastha. Dharma means the characteristics, lakshana the state, and avastha the condition. The commentators have gone into some detail in explaining these, and as per them, dharma, the characteristics of any object mentioned by Patanjali in this sutra, is referred to that which is distinctive and specific about that object. It can also refer to the function that object performs. Say for example, sugar. Sugar has a dharma, has a characteristic, has a property of sweetness. So sweetness is specific to sugar. Sweetness is distinctive to sugar. So one can easily, on tasting anything which is sweet, it may be in any form, any color, any shape, any size, one can easily say it is sugary. It has the dharma of sweetness. So that is what is meant by dharma. Now dharma is such a word in the Sanskrit language and used in Hinduism that it has more than 100 meanings. Swami Chinmayananda, while commenting on the Bhagavad Gita, said the word dharma, if you look up in the dictionary, you will find it has more than 100 meanings. So the question is, here dharma refers to the natural propensities, the natural activities, psychological inclinations or characteristics. Now when you understand this, it becomes clear that we are talking about the inherent specific characteristics either of an object or of an individual. So dharma is one parameter which undergoes change in Prakriti, and this is what we need to understand. The second parameter is lakshana. Lakshana is the state of an object and is to be understood with reference to time. Avastha is the third item on Patanjali's list, and it is taken to refer to the condition of that object, condition of that mind, condition of that sense. So dear friends, let us take an example. Let us take the example of clay, and at a particular point in time it can be made into a pot. Once it is made into a pot, it assumes the characteristics of the pot, the properties of the pot, and it does not show the property of a cup. It does not show the property of a saucer or any other clay object. But because a pot has been made out of clay, that object now displays the properties of the pot. Therefore, the pot becomes the specific dharma that was present in the clay, that was potential in the clay. And the same clay can assume different dharmas, different characteristics by being transformed into other things. One can make cups out of clay, one can make saucers out of clay. So here we see that clay remains the base, the substratum, and the pot, the cup, the saucer come out of the clay. They are transformed and they show various characteristics, different characteristics. A pot is different from a cup is different from a saucer in its characteristics, in its properties, in its functions, but the underlying clay remains the same. This underlying clay, this substrate in Sanskrit is called the dharman. Dharman means one that actually is the possessor of these dharmas. So clay possesses the characteristics of a pot, clay possesses the characteristics of a cup, and the clay possesses the characteristics of a saucer. But depending on what it is turned into, it starts behaving accordingly and displaying those specific characteristics now. In a similar fashion, one can understand the lakshana. Lakshana of a state of an object is understood with respect to its situation in time. A pot can exist in the past, can exist in the present, and it can exist in the future also. Avastha, the third parameter on this Patanjali's list, is taken to refer to the condition of this pot. Now this pot can also similarly be in the past, present or future. But in the past, when the pot was made, its condition would have been new. In the present, since some time has passed, the condition of the pot would have slightly worsened. In the future, the pot might be in a far worse shape, or the pot might get damaged, the pot might get broken. Therefore, the avastha of the pot is changing with time. So dear friends, all objects, anything which you see around yourself in this manifest reality can be conceived as undergoing a constant change, and this constant change happens in three parameters, in three dimensions. Number one, the characteristics or the dharma. Number two, the state or lakshana. And number three, the condition or avastha. Now these also connect to the categories in the mind, and the dharma of any mind at any given moment is all pointed. We know the essential basic nature, characteristic of the mind. It is roaming about uncontrolled, or with practice a yogi can make it one-pointed. So therefore this dharma is qualified by lakshana, the temporal state, the state in time. So the mind could be one-pointed sometime in the past when the person was sitting in meditation and focusing the mind to a particular point, making it one-pointed, or once one is out of the meditation and the mind has come back into the world, and then it again becomes all-pointed. So the mind undergoes a change because of time, and this is something which will constantly keep on happening. So number one, we find the characteristic of the object or the mind changes with time. Now one needs to understand that their Prakriti has gunas, Prakriti has qualities, and these qualities keep on changing constantly, continuously, at random. Nobody can predict what is going to happen, and these changes, these constant changes in the gunas, they underpin, they are a part of all manifest reality, whether it be the nature of our mind or it be all matter around us. Say right now you are looking at me through a mobile phone or through a laptop or a PC. Now this PC, this laptop, this mobile, its properties will change with time. Today it is made up of matter, it is made up of elements from this earth, it is made up of certain materials manufactured in a factory using certain designs, but it is undergoing a constant change. The state of your laptop, your mobile or your PC is not going to remain constant. Its characteristics will change. It will, number one. Number two, it will move through time. It will have a past, it will have a present, and it will have a future. And number three, the conditions will change. When you had a laptop on the day one, it was a beautifully packaged laptop, and the day one you started it, it was brand new. Today it might be a few days or a few months or a few years old. Tomorrow it might not be in a working condition. You might have to scrap it, or you might have to throw it away, or probably get it repaired. So this is the underlying change which will always happen in manifest reality. And it does not happen only in objects. It also happens in our mind. Our mind cannot be constantly fixed. Our mind keeps on changing because these gunas of Prakriti, which are constantly changing, fluctuating at random, they also impact and affect our mind. And our mind keeps on changing in terms of its behavioral characteristics, in terms of the time in which it is operating, and in terms of the condition it is displaying based on various points of time. But the most important thing here is to understand, if we say are looking at a pot, or we are looking at a saucer, or we are looking at a cup, these three objects have the same substratum, the same base, the same dharman from which they have come, and that is the clay. The clay does not change. In all these three different dharmas, different properties, different functions, different characteristics, the clay remains the same. And it is always possible to move back from where we are to the original state of that matter, that object. So in this case, if I take a pot, and if that pot becomes broken, and if it is crushed to a powder, then by adding some water to it, it may be possible to create a saucer out of it and bake it up again and have a fresh new saucer in our hands. So the clay which creates the pot is the base, and the pot goes back into the base, goes back into clay. The saucer goes back into the clay. The cup goes back into the clay. Similarly, dear friends, our mind remains the same basic substratum, but it can be at times one-pointed, fully concentrated, focused on one image, or it might be at 100 different points at the same time. So the mind remains the same, but its dharma, its characteristics are changing with time. And when with time the characteristics are changing, the working condition, the working ability of the mind also changes, the condition changes. So a one-pointed mind, a mind which is fully concentrated, has tremendous power. Whatever work is assigned to it, it does that with tremendous power. But a mind which is spread out, a mind which is divided and putting its attention at 100 places, lacks concentration. So accordingly, in its working, the condition of its results would be very poor. So here is one way of understanding this. Another good example can be some vessel made out of gold. Say if you have a gold vessel, and Vyasa, one of the major commentators, is giving this example. He says, supposing I have a vessel made out of gold, and I melt it and I make it into something else, then does it cease to be gold? No, it continues to be gold. So the gold in any particular object, it has the potential of being molded into any other golden object, and that has been in the past and might be made in the future. Therefore, in a way, dear friends, you can understand the past and the future are latent, are present in the present, but are latent, but are dormant. What it simply means is that if I have a gold vessel and if I melt it, it goes back to its original base, original substratum of gold. Out of that gold, I can create a golden necklace. A necklace has a different dharma than a golden pot. So here the dharma of both these items are different, but both of them are made from gold. Both of them have the same base as gold. And this necklace again can be melted and turned into golden bangles. So again, this is the third object. And the bangles, the golden bangles, they have different characteristics, different properties, a different dharma than a golden necklace or a golden vessel. But even then, the base, the substratum, continues to be gold. So this is something very important to understand. From the base material, we transform and create objects of different properties and different dharma, different characteristics. And this is what happens in the entire Prakriti. Out of Prakriti, by transformation in Prakriti, our body gets created. By transformation of Prakriti, my mind gets created. Out of transformation of the same Prakriti, my ego gets created. Out of transformation of the same Prakriti, my intellect, my senses, and the 5 subtle elements, the 5 gross elements, all of them are getting created from the same base, from the same root. And that is how it happens in manifest reality. This is what Patanjali is pointing out. You see, I can give you another crude example. When we all die, our body does not leave the planet Earth. Whether we are burnt or we are buried or in any way our body is put to an end, the matter out of which this body is made, it goes back to Earth. And that Earth again becomes a nutrition for some living plant, a living organism, and then it again comes in circulation, and it might again become a part of some other body. So for all of us on this planet, Dharti, Prithvi, Earth is the base out of which everything comes. Our houses, our factories, our cars, everything is coming out of this earth. And once it is scrapped, it is again going back into the earth or into some other form. So it is going back into one base, and from that base one is creating another object with different properties out of it. So Patanjali has introduced this somewhat difficult to understand, somewhat detailed philosophical discussion of the sutras at this stage, because this is important to understand that this is a sort of an indispensable metaphysics which one needs to understand. It was needed by Patanjali so that he could establish it here, and it is important to understand this underlying principle which operates in all material reality. And according to both the schools, the school of Sankhya and the school of Yoga, and once when you understand the mechanics of this, then you understand all the mechanics which are underpinning the siddhis and the mystic powers. And this chapter, the third chapter, will be focusing on this mystic powers, the siddhis. Therefore, dear friends, one needs to understand this underlying metaphysics of the yoga school, the Sankhya school, which gives a particular view. This view can be understood as Satkarya. Satkarya means Sat means existence, and karya means effect, result. So what the principle of Satkarya says is, any effect is present in the cause. So this is a very big major statement. Any effect is present in the cause. That means this existence is a continuing existence. This existence is a chain of cause and effects. A cause will lead to an effect, and that effect in turn will become the cause for the second effect. That second effect will become the cause for the third effect, and so on and so forth. It rolls. So this helps us to connect all objects with their properties, with their condition in time. So all objects have a beginning, all objects have an end, all objects have a past, all objects have a future, and once when we start understanding this past and future, then we are able to connect the flow of material, the flow of how this manifested nature works, and then we can take our mind into the past, into the future, and project what is not seen today in the present can be projected in the past and can be projected into the future. And to what extent can we project in the past? We can project to any limit. We can project backwards till the beginning of time, till the Anadi Kal, the very beginning of the beginning. And it is possible by extrapolation of this cause and effect principle of Satkarya to go as much into the future as we want. Therefore, while we are shifting in the past, in the future, looking at the present, looking at the objects, for instance, so these three parameters of the characteristics, the dharma, the lakshana, the state in terms of time, and the avastha, the condition of that object, these three inputs allow us to move back in time and to move in the future. So dear friends, very, very important, and it is said that the effect which happens in nature is actually only an internal change of the way the atoms in an object are arranged, and that arrangement is the cause, and this exists in a potential form, and by just bringing about a little loosening of the barriers which control this change, we are able to create a change or arrangement which will produce the desired new effect. So this doctrine is called Satkaryavad, and that one needs to understand that the karya or the effect is already existing in the existence even before the cause to produce the effect was launched. What it means is, I am talking to you now. This is happening. This effect has happened because of a cause prior to this, and that cause which has made me give you this talk now today was caused in turn by some previous cause. So whatever is happening now in your world in the present moment is coming from the past, and in the past is the cause, now is the effect. One very powerful example which I use in my classes on manifestation is that if the cause and effect are existing together, then we are able to actually see only one of them. Why? Because the cause and the effect are shifted in time, and we under normal circumstances can only see in one time. So we see either the cause or the effect. But just because the cause and effect both are existing, so if I want to have a particular effect in my life, if I have a desire for a particular event to happen in my life, then I automatically know there is a cause which will cause this effect, which will cause this event in my life. And all I need to do is locate that cause. And when I'm able to locate that cause, then I have to figure out the process by which one can move from that cause to the current effect. Well, that is a different in-depth topic about manifestation based on Sankhya, knowledge based on the knowledge from the Yoga Sutras. It is a rare kind of knowledge, not many people know it. But once you know it, once you understand it, then you can virtually manifest anything you desire in your creation. Let's look at another example. Supposing there is a banyan tree and supposing there is a bed of roses. This has been explained by Edwin Bryant. He says, then both of them are made up of atoms, both of them are made up of anus. When the tree dies, its anus, its atoms dissolve back into nature, into Prakriti, and they once again appear in new forms and new configurations. So dear friends, everything comes out from everything and everything becomes everything out of that everything. Yeah, everything comes out of everything and everything becomes everything as it comes out of everything. It is a state of constant flux. Things are constantly shifting and moving. Things are moving in time from one property to another property, from one condition to another condition. Now once when we understand this, that the substratum, the base on which these changes are happening is actually common. It remains the same both in the past and the present and the future. Then it gives us tremendous knowledge and tremendous power over the way Prakriti works. As I told you, for example, let us go back to the pot. The dharman, the substratum here is clay, and out of clay comes the various pots and plates and saucers and cups. So they may be produced from it in the past, present or future. But the clay, where does the clay come from? The clay itself is transformed, is a product of something which is more subtle, which is more primordial, which is more earlier in time. That is Prakriti. So clay, and for that matter all the objects which we see in our manifest reality are themselves dharmas or characteristics or properties which are coming from an underlying subtler substratum base. So if you go back and back and back, you will find all objects, all matter, all elements, all gases, solids and liquids in this entire cosmos. They go back and reach the primal state of Prakriti herself. So dear friends, because of time, space and other causal factors, Prakriti is not manifesting the same thing at the same time at all places. It is manifesting it at a particular place, at a particular time, because of a particular reason. So everything which is happening, which is out there, in the manifest reality is actually a temporary reality, is actually a temporary manifestation out of Prakriti. And therefore by that logic, as Raja Bhoja puts it, he says there is no difference between a cloth and a pot, because both of them have come from the same Prakriti. So everything has its same origin, everything has its same source. So all mind, all matter, all objects, all senses, everything is originating from Prakriti. So this is one important principle we need to learn, and we will see that if one is able to understand the mechanics of the mystic powers of a yogi, then we will understand that those who have mastered this, they are actually able to change the conditions of an object or the mind. They are able to change the lakshana, the state of the object's time, and they are also able to change the properties of an object as they are able to fluidly move from one object to its base, and from that base to another object which might be completely different in character, in its state and its condition. So this actually looks as supernatural powers for a yogi, but it is because of the subtle substructure of this physical reality that everything is coming out of Prakriti, and the yogi is able to cause matter to behave in what appears to be a supernatural or miraculous ways. Therefore, dear friends, from the purpose of the metaphysics of yoga, there is nothing magical about this. There is a Sankhyan physics which is underpinning the material reality, the manifested reality, and one can understand this reality and the techniques for manipulating this reality. So one can see that from the Sankhya chart of the 25 tattvas of this creation, of this evolved creation, we will find that everything has come, all physical objects have come out of the mind, and the mind, the individual mind for that matter, has come from the cosmic mind, and the cosmic mind in turn has come from Prakriti, and Prakriti itself has got activated because of the presence of the Purusha close to it. Therefore, a yogi is going back in evolution. He is born in a world where the objects are there, his attention is on the objects. He goes back from the objects through the senses to the mind, to the ego, to the intellect, and to the cosmic intelligence, and to the mool primordial Prakriti, and further down to the Purusha. So while he is going back, while he is pulling his consciousness back, pulling his awareness back, he starts acquiring power over Prakriti and his area, the principle where he is focusing on, the tattva he is operating on. And by this he is able to bring about changes in the manifested reality. He is able to twist and turn matter. He is able to change the laws of matter, the laws of the universe, and this in a way explains how the siddhis come about and how a yogi is able to work on this. Another important sutra, which is the 15th sutra in continuation, Patanjali says that when we change the sequence in which these characteristics happen, these properties happen, then we are able to cause the change in the transformations of these objects. So this is the last sutra on that particular topic about the manifested reality and its underlying connection with the substratum, with the base, and how everything is connected to Prakriti, and how Prakriti is the source from which all dharma is coming out as a transformation, and all the dharma, all the characteristics which are coming out are actually existing in lakshana, existing in a state with reference to time, and they have a condition, the avastha, which keeps on changing. So this sequencing, this parinama, the result of this change in sequence, creates the characteristics, the state and condition of the object. For example, when clay powder, to clay, when water is added, to clay powder, when we add water, it becomes like a clay dough. And once we put it on a potter's wheel and a potter works on it, it becomes a clay pot. And once that clay pot is broken into small pieces, it again becomes a clay powder. So all change which is happening here is thus sequence of characteristics and not actually a change of substance. The substance remains the clay. It is the clay which was present as a powder. It was a clay which was made watery and turned into a dough. It was the clay which was put on the potter's wheel. It became a clay pot. It was that clay which was crushed, and that crushed clay becomes the clay powder again. So all throughout the substance remains clay. What is changing are the transformations, are the characteristics, the sequence in which those characteristics are being changed. So similarly, it applies to everything in our life. If a yogi is able to not only manipulate matter, but is also able to change the sequence, the ingredients of a process to move it from cause to effect, then the effect changes. Say for instance, if the starting cause remains A, but if the subsequent process is changed, then the end result will get changed. So the characteristics, the sequence of those characteristics constitute the process. So the sequence of characteristics, the dharma, decides the end result, the parinama, the end transformation of what is obtained as a result. So dear friends, here we saw one of the most important metaphysics of yoga, shastras and even Sankhya Darshan, and I hope you have understood this well. If you have questions, you may ask. Once this is understood in a proper manner, then a person, a student of the Yoga Sutras, is able to grasp in complete detail and understand how the yogi masters Prakriti and how the yogi brings about changes in Prakriti. How is he able to bend the laws of our reality? This requires a bit of a study if you have not been able to understand. So you can be in touch with us, or you can do one of our programs on the subject, and I'm sure once you understand this and you understand the other Yoga Sutras, you will be able to experience permanent happiness in your life. Permanent happiness, dear friends, is the goal we want to bring permanent happiness to each and every family on this planet, and we hope these talks, these Yoga Sutras will help you to gain that permanent happiness, to explain that permanent happiness to members of your family, members of your society, people of our country, and the people of this world at large. And I'm sure with the combined efforts of all of us, we will be able to go through yogic healing of our own minds, and we will be able to heal our world together. Thank you so much for being here, listening to this talk. See you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. Thank you so much. May God bless you all. Thank you.